There we go. Okay, it's probably... Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, and today I've got something special for you. I am making a small 8-inch multicolored Atlas stone. So I have all the supplies here that we need to get started. One, you need a Labrador. Just kidding. So I have 2 buckets because I'm making 2 different colors and having them come together as like a swirl pattern. That's the idea, at least. So this is where I'm going to be doing the mixing. I have this bucket. This is where I'll actually prepare this solution, and a measuring cup, which we'll get into in just a moment. When you're doing Atlas stone molds, I recommend using Gorilla Tape. It just works a little bit better than Duck Brand tape. Also, you'll need some sort of silicone lubricant. This is a stone release. You can buy this from Slater's Hardware itself. I'll link it down below. Or you can just go to Lowe's. I just use the Blaster silicone lubricant, and it's worked for me for a long time. You'll also need a Slater Atlas stone mold. There are plenty of options, and by plenty I mean 2 that I know of, when it comes to actual reusable Atlas stone molds. Slater's, in my opinion, is just a lot better. Plus, Steve Slater's a good guy to support. I'm going to need a scale, which this is going to go with the measuring cup, and then obviously the 2 colors that I chose, which are charcoal and red. So I'm hoping for a cool contrast there. I'm also going to use this to mix up if I need it. I'm not sure if I'm going to need it yet, but we'll find out. And then of course, some Pro Finish 5000. This is what I use for all of my larger stones. I actually wanted to try to use a countertop concrete mix, but I couldn't find one, so we're just going to go with this for now, and we'll see how it comes out. This is going to be the instructions that I mainly use for actually mixing the concrete together. So you can see it says to use 2.8 liters of clean mixing water for an 80-pound bag. This Atlas stone mold is going to give us about a 24-ish pound stone. It's usually lighter than that from my experience. And so what I did was I took 80 pounds and I divided 12 into 80, which gives me 0.15, and then times to sound like a 5-year-old. I then multiply 0.15 by 2.8 liters, and I got 0.42. So just a couple quick things. When you're actually mixing concrete for Atlas stone molds, you want to go a little bit thinner on the mix. So you want to add a little bit more water than you typically think you should. So when I do my calculation and it comes out to 0.42 liters or 420 milliliters, I'm going to just do 500 milliliters. And if I need more concrete, I'll just add to it to get it a little bit thicker. But when it comes to Atlas stone molds, try to go, if you have the concrete, try to add more water than you think you might need. And I'm talking like not much extra, but just a little bit extra. And add concrete to get it thick again if you need to. Already I've had to add a couple tools. After reading the instructions on the Quikrete color, it says that you can't use more than 1 of these per 60-pound bag. And you can use up to 1 bottle per 2 80-pound bags. So I'm just going to keep this simple. I have an 80-pound bag here and I got 10 ounces. So for each 8 pounds, I'm going to add 1 ounce, which means that I'm just going to round that up to 2 ounces of color and see how that looks. Spoiler alert, the color comes out really nice. One of the things that doesn't come out nice though is if you watch closely here, when I go to pour this colored mix out of the glass measuring cups, that's what does not pour out so nicely. It's actually a huge pain in the butt. So we're already learning something here with the black. What I ended up doing is I made 500 milliliters of water with 2 ounces of the dye, and there was dye that was left over in the measuring cup, and I just had to spray that out. So I don't know if it affected the color too much, but what I'm going to do this time is 400 milliliters inside the measuring cup. Now I'm going to add the dye, and that way I can do like a 100 milliliter swirl to try to get the rest of that dye into the red bucket. So being the resourceful guy I am, I thought, well, I can improvise and I can overcome this. And so what I thought was, okay, well, I'll just save a little bit of water and I'll rinse the rest of this dye out of the glass container with that little bit of extra water. So now really what I've done is I've just made it so that 2 of the measuring cups are in fact covered in this annoying red dye. The next step is going to be measuring out 12 pounds of concrete, which is what I've calculated this out to need, into this bucket. We're going to do that twice. So just a couple things here as well. Please do as I say and not as I do. I guess if you're going to work with concrete, you should probably have personal protective equipment such as gloves and or maybe a respirator, or just don't breathe the crap in. I don't know. One of the things that I've read is that when you're doing this, you want to make sure that the actual water is very well blended before you actually press. And so the plastic is nice because the coloring doesn't actually stick to it. So maybe for next time when I'm doing this, instead of using glass measuring cups, just use plastic measuring cups, and that might make me lose a lot less of that coloring fluid. Definitely getting the color 100% mixed in is 100% beneficial to you as the stone maker, and this drill is actually working super well to help me get everything mixed up nicely. That came out really nice. It's a good color, very good consistency. I'm happy with it. So since I'm happy with that, I'm going to put the Atlas stone mold together real quick. So some word on the Slater Stones Atlas stone molds. Or I guess Slater's Hardware Atlas stone molds. One, there's this black line. This black line is made out of permanent marker. It's literally just a mark that they make before they cut the stone, or not the stone, but the mold in half. What you'll want to do periodically if you reuse these is actually remark where that black line's at, because when they cut this thing, there's some slight imperfections that kind of help with reducing the seam that's around the major diameter. As you can see on the inside here, if I can get it to focus, the lack of a seam is what makes this unique from the hybrid mold, because in the hybrid mold you have that fat seam that's there the whole time, and it's kind of annoying. You usually got to fill it in. With the Slaters you avoid a lot of that. So what I like to do is use Gorilla Tape. First thing is clean off the insides of your mold. Then I use Gorilla Tape to put the mold together. Again, making sure that my line is matched up perfectly. And you'll also want to take your hand and kind of rub on the inside all along that seam to make sure there aren't any gaps. Really slight turns in this can kind of mess this whole process up. So just slight turns. Once it's set where I want it, I'm going to duct tape it. I'm not going to force it because it'll cause the mold to actually distort a little bit, and then that seam's going to come back. You just want it firmly held together. That's all. Another pro tip to conserve on tape, because this is just an 8-inch stone, each length that I take, I'm actually going to tear down the middle. You'd be surprised how much tape you end up going through when you're making stone. So cutting your tape in half can be a real tape saver. So that's how the first piece of tape goes. And I like to do this like you change tires on a car. So if I put one here, I'm going to put the next one right here. And so on and so forth. Just checking the inside again to make sure that that seam is how I want it. Make sure that nothing has come out of position, which this one's good. And I'm going to go with 4 pieces. That's good enough. The next step is going to be to use your silicone spray. What I like to do is just kind of, because the can obviously won't spray upside down, this particular brand, I just spray in and kind of rotate around and then move the stone to get a nice coat. Realistically speaking, with an 8-inch stone, this isn't that serious. But I like to make sure that everything on the inside is nice and coated with this. And you can even see you develop a little pool that's in there. And you can roll it around to make sure that it contacts all the parts. And just like that, our Atlas stone mold is prepped. I'm going to use this to hold it upright. And now we're going to measure out 12 pounds of concrete for the red bucket. You can see how it's kind of stuck on the bottom. Just give it some swirls. You can see it's starting to like pull away from the sides. I just want to make sure I've got all that dye because I want this red to be really vibrant. But I also need to make a few of these stones, so I don't want to waste all of my dye on the first one. All right, we can see we're making some progress. Even more is coming apart. All right, we're good to go. Now I'm just gonna alternate. So I'm gonna go a little bit of black, a little bit of red, a little bit of black, a little bit of red. And we're gonna fill this thing up. See how she goes. What's nice about going thinner on the mix is that you can actually pour straight out of the bucket. This is a huge advantage because if you don't, you gotta use your hands. And then from there, it's just a matter of working out all the air bubbles. So with these 8-inch stones, you really don't need to do too much. Just a little tapping around the outside and you'll actually see the air bubbles coming up through. I'll give you a close-up shot of that. And this is what I'm talking about. So I'm just taking a screwdriver and just slightly tapping around the outside. And you can see these air bubbles as they start to work their way up. See all those air bubbles. And all those air bubbles are tiny imperfections that just don't look that good on the stone once it's complete. So if you're going to take your time doing something here, this is it. You also notice that you're getting a lot of soupy mix up here. And what we'll do is the black mix is a little bit thicker. So I'm just going to add a little bit more black. Pouring concrete can be messy, so my advice is to kind of get over it and get in there. We're actually getting the thinner stuff coming up and the thicker stuff is staying in. And all I'm doing is just kind of cupping over the top to try to pick up that liquid but leave the solid. And then I tap. Comes out. Alright, now we could be out here all night doing this, but at a certain point you just have to kind of accept it for what it is. And I'm getting the feeling that this is not going to come out quite how I wanted it. Alright, so now you want to find some place where it can actually cure. I'm choosing right here because there's no rain really forecasted for the next couple days. It's underneath an overhang and it'll get plenty of sun. Really, this thing will be dry tomorrow, and so we'll see if it came out quite how I wanted it. Now, with stones, with concrete, cleanup is essential. So make sure that you clean up as soon as you can. If you let this stuff dry, it's going to destroy all your equipment. Alright, so now we're back for day 2, and this is what we have. We have a nice formed mini Atlas stone. You can see the top of it's nice and smooth. There's definitely some color to it. So let's see what's inside. So it's not exactly what I thought it would be, but it's a good first try. So as you can see, we do have a little bit of multi-shading color here, but it seems like it's mostly just black on the bottom and red up on the top. Also, my mix was a little bit thin, so all this up here is caused by the mix being just a little bit too thin. So next time, a little bit of a thicker mix. But the seam is relatively small and everything else looks really good with it. So we'll try this again, do another round, and see if it comes out any better on the next one. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the world's fastest stone maker. Look at him go. He's making another stone. Look at my sweet garage. Look at that awesome shelf. But he's so quick. He's so fast. He's back. He's forth. He's back. He's forth. He's measuring stuff. He's mixing concrete. Oh, that water wasn't good enough. Oh, but that water, that'll do. Got a little bit of bottle action there. Learned from my mistakes before with the glass containers. And off we go. Now we're going to start mixing. We get the drill. We start mixing. Look at how thick it is. I went a lot thicker with this mix than I did the last one. And the idea is I'll be able to add them alternatively and one won't sink into the other. What I'm worried about is that there might be a bunch of air pockets, but I guess there's only one way to find out. So again, this is a thicker mix. This is about 300 milliliters of water to 12 pounds of concrete, red and black. And I'm just gonna alternate between the two, and I'm just gonna use my hands. One of the things I wish I had were some gloves, but as it turns out, I just ran out of those. So it should have struck me from the moment I started mixing this stuff up. How the heck am I going to get the air bubbles out of this stone? Now, another spoiler alert for you guys, this thing ends up looking like Dimitar Savatinov's head. So I've appropriately named this stone Dimitar. You'll see the results here. So this is the result of the 3 different stones that I ended up making. The very first stone that you saw the whole instruction on, I was measuring out the water and telling you guys the measurements, that's this one here. The nice part about this one is that it's nice and smooth. There's minimal air bubbles that are actually in the surface of the stone on both the top and the bottom hemisphere. What's not so good about it is that the colors kind of blended together, and so there's no definitive line where I wanted there to be more of like a swirl pattern. This is the second stone I did, and I kind of went all the way to the other side of the spectrum, so there's a lot less water involved, and obviously the problem is that there was a lot more air bubbles that got trapped in the surface of the stone, and even though I tapped it for a decently long time, there's still a whole bunch of air pockets that are still left in it. So, just like Goldilocks, one was too liquidy, one was too solid, and the third one was just right. So the third one, although it does have some air pockets that are in it, the colors are a lot more solid, and there's more of a direct like swirl pattern. There's more of a direct change in color between the red and the black. A lot less blending. But anyways, all 3 of these are going to end up being trophies. I actually have one additional one to make, so maybe that 4th one will be the best one yet. If you want to, you can jump on my Instagram and I'll probably post a picture of it there. But that's the video. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Let me know below when you're making Atlas stones, what kind of mixtures are you using? Are you going thin? Are you going thick? And what other techniques do you maybe do differently than I do? Appreciate you watching my video, and I'll see you next time.